Hey everybody, welcome to week 7. You only have one more week after this. I bet you're excited to have another class finished. You guys have done a great job this week and all throughout the course. Just want to take a moment and remind you to catch up on any posts that you haven't finished or any assignments, as grades will be due pretty quickly, a couple days after week 8 ends, so you won't have much time to catch up. So please make sure you get all those assignments done. This week is on psychological disorders. You only have one chapter to read, chapter 14. I think you'll find it really interesting. Probably one of the most interesting chapters in the text. And you're going to be describing and applying psychological concepts just like you have been all along, while making sure that you're discussing it in a way that proves the psychological literacy and that you can read and write effectively about it. Additionally, you will use appropriate writing skills and presentation skills with APA format for your paper. And we're going to apply psychologically based concepts and skills to career goals, exhibit self-efficacy and self-regulation, and refine project management skills. So you basically, it's kind of down to crunch time. So how can you manage your time and get your things done and look at your own mental health, so to speak, as we're working on mental health issues this week. Make sure that you're, making sure that your stress levels are in check and that you're balancing your emotions as you're going through school. That's all part of what we're doing in this course. So like I said, you're just going to read chapter 14. You have, as usual, your 2 discussion questions for the week. Please make sure they're at least 250 words. And again, your 3 responses are at least 150 words minimum. And then these need to be spread across 3 days, which you guys have been doing a great job of. And this week, your big assignment is your literature review, which is basically a research paper. I've attached the link to the guidelines on the homepage with this week's announcements in case you want to print that off and use that. That also includes the presentation portion of it, which will be due week 8. That will be your assignment for week 8. So go ahead and just look at that. A lot of the information for week 8 will be repeated, just a different format, so it shouldn't be as much work as the paper itself. Please make sure this is in proper APA format, and I will also upload a link to OWL Purdue in case you need help with that. It has a sample paper, and make sure it's in APA. Please turn in your notary form if you haven't turned that in, and please, please, please catch up on all your postings this week. Next week's going to be kind of a bit of a scramble, so you don't want to be waiting for them till then. So this week we're going to be looking at different classes of psychological disorders. You're going to have your psychological disorders, and also then there's personality disorders, which are a little bit different. Psychological disorders have more to do with brain functioning and genetics, as well as different parts of the brain that might be acting differently. These are things like schizophrenia, which has different forms and subtypes, and anxiety disorders, and it will also include depression, bipolar disorder, those kind of things. And these are things that are highly genetic, but can also be brought out by the environment, so that's why we call them epigenetic. Epigenetics means that you have the gene, but the environment or some stressor in life can actually activate the gene if it isn't already activated at a certain age. So a similar example would be if you had the celiac gene and it was turned off, but then you were very stressed and eating a ton of bread, and the gene would turn on, and then you would have celiac. And then I think it would be very rare that the gene would ever get turned off. That would be somewhat miraculous. And then we also have our personality disorders, which are very interesting. The interesting thing about personality disorders is that usually the person who has the personality disorder is unaware and unbothered by the disorder. It's usually the people around them that are bothered by it. And that's, so if we take an example of OCD versus OCPD, OCD being obsessive compulsive disorder and OCPD being obsessive compulsive personality disorder, the difference between those is that the person with OCD is going to find their symptoms and their thoughts those kind of things to be distressing, which is what we call ego dystonic. So, for example, if a person with OCD has an obsessive fear that they're going to run someone over with their car, we know that's OCD and not antisocial personality disorder because the person with OCD finds it of great distress because in their personality they would never run someone over, but the thoughts are telling them they might. So that's ego dystonic, meaning it's not aligned with who they are and they don't like the thoughts. Ego syntonic means the symptoms and what's going on are aligned with what the person likes and their goals. So, for example, in obsessive compulsive personality disorder, the person may have very detailed, rigid rules of how they do things. They may interact with people in a way where they don't trust anyone to get their work done except for them. They may be perfectionists. They may need certain kinds of orders and structures. And the difference is it's ego syntonic because they're happy about it. It's fine with them. It's how they want to do things, and they don't see anything wrong with it, whereas the people around them might be quite frustrated. So that's a little difference between psychological disorders and personality disorders, just to highlight that. You're going to be looking at nature versus nurture, and then what is the role of God in this? Does God heal in these things? Does he provide healing through counseling, healing through medication? If some people can cope without medication, some cannot. And so how do we take a compassionate stance? Can we view this as one of the ways that God heals if a person needs medication? So encourage you to think about that. Keep up the great job. You're almost finished. Let me know if you have any questions, and see you in week 8.